the 29th mover matters. And it's just crazy. So we get like these panics and we get these overly optimistic, like, oh my God, this changed everything. And then you
Game
say
changer.
something like, yeah, game changer,
Game
breaking,
changer.
not breaking
Right.
news.
Right.
But you dropped a good one on me today. You're like, I've stopped calling it AI. And I think this is a great thing because I said to you the thing that I've known for a while, like we call everything AI now, right? And my blender knows how to make a margarita versus a pina colada.
Mm-hmm.
That's AI. Is it? Or is that just, an algorithm that says blend at this rate for this long, this many times? Is that AI? Has my blender achieved sentience? And I'm not mocking AI, but I am mocking AI right now.
You're mocking your blender, that's for sure. So
Now my blender is smart.
algorithms themselves used to be cool. It was cool enough that I got a master's degree in it. So way back when they were really cool, but now everything is, what are you doing with AI? What are you doing with this? What are you doing with that? And what we're talking about when we talk about AI these days is we're talking about generative algorithms, like the completion algorithm that does text or the diffusion algorithm that does pictures and video. And these algorithms, what's really cool about them is that somebody like me who spent a few years doing academic training can actually understand how they work and what they do. Even people without academic training can get an understanding of how they work and what they do. And Pete, even people who use them, by using them in certain ways and seeing how they perform with some basic inputs, can get a sense for what they do, and we can reason about that sense. That's what computer science is all about. It's why we're not mathematicians. It's, we claimed 80 years ago, we can start to make sense of these things and reason about them and talk about the limits of their capabilities and know what those are. And we can walk through our code line by line and we can see what it's doing. Pete, another thing we were talking about today that made you laugh, earlier, was I said we still can't generate random numbers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's true.
We
Right. Yeah.
these are
Right.
these are when we generate what we call random numbers with computers, they are pseudo random numbers. There is a
Right.
generator function and it has a seed input, and if you give it the seed input that you gave it the last time, it will generate the same sequence of numbers. That's not random.
Yeah.
Now, good enough for government work, good enough for cryptography, good enough for anything we want to throw at it. But
Right.
still, we don't know how
Not
to
random.
generate we don't know how to
Yeah.
generate random numbers. That's crazy,
Right.
huh?
The
So the
proper
idea that
name would be the not random number generator.
yeah, we
And yet
call it
and
we
yet anybody's eye, it's completely random. But these differences matter. Now let's talk about
we
that too.
we call them pseudo random number generators when we call them, what they are. So
Mhm.
this whole sense that somehow throwing a whole bunch of hardware together and running code that we can understand somehow establish sentience. You hear people talk about sentience when they talk about AGI. What does AGI even stand for? It's the big thing we're all working for, allegedly, spending hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars on. Trump stood there with Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, and I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but Sun from SoftBank in Japan,
Hmm.
and announced
Right.
$500 billion of a private initiative to do AI. And this was the amazing thing that this was the amazing AI initiative. So
Mm.
less than a week later, we have, just a few days later, in fact, we have an announcement from a small Chinese startup, a guy who's barely out of grad school. He's 5 years out of grad school. He's a quant, and he
Right.
put together a little team and about $5 million of investment, and they made a model, an open weight model. Some call them open source, but we'll call it open weight. That is basically lit the world on fire. Like, everybody's
Right.
like, "Wow, that can do what OpenAI is doing," and it's pretty amazing the conversations that started for me this week, because I've been ahead on, can we run these things on our computers? Can they give us good enough answers that we don't have to put in the cloud along with all our customer data and all those other things? So it's an interesting time. But they aren't
The
intelligent, Pete. These algorithms are not intelligent, artificially or otherwise. They are
right.
generative
Right.
algorithms.
generative algorithms. And when you
Yes.
talk about a not random number generator, why does it even matter? Like again, like you and I, if we both ran the thing, we'd be like, that's totally random, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's not. And so when does it matter? When does the I was telling you about this episode of Jordan Peterson, who was talking with this guest,
Yes.
and he declared. I don't know if you watched that, but he declared AI sentient by a given standard.
They both declared AI sentient, and it was the scariest, cringiest stuff I think I could ever hear. The guy's got an absolutely great point, by the way, about the the uh, the ridiculous accounting we're doing with energy to pretend that we do clean energy and to write oil out of it, fossil fuels out of
Right.
it. That's insane. We
Yeah.
we do insane things with that when fossil fuels power the world.
Right.
But at the same time, we're kind of backed into a corner right now because these people do think it's sentient and they do think it's important to turn all the energy we have at our disposal into this sentience.
Right. Right.
Totally crazy.
So let's go back to the sentient declaration by Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson. And look, this isn't knocking these guys. Look, we're all trying to figure this out. And
I'm knocking
when
these
you
guys.
okay, that's fine. When we're talking about academic situations and you're trying to establish a theory, whatever it is, you're going to say, in this case, given these parameters, and I'm making like a longer statement than they would normally pay, but like you talk about a very specific moment in time when you talk about an academic finding, because you can't just make these gigantic statements, because then all of a sudden there's just too many areas where you can't say definitively that what you're saying is true. So you have to say, if a AI generating machine can come up with whatever, then it's sentient, right? And then you're like, okay, but that's not true, and start attacking it. So did you agree with their premise, even like the academic premise of what they said in terms of sentience?
I honestly found it laughable, Pete, and I'll tell you why. It's because computer science is a discipline. And now I'm not talking about the subdisciplines. There is a subdiscipline of computer science called artificial intelligence, and it's come up with crazy stuff over the past 50 years. Absolutely crazy stuff over and over that we then rein them in and say, hey, stop your craziness. The discipline itself, what I studied in college and in grad school, was about being able to say, no, these things aren't sentient. They actually have limits, and we as human beings can understand what we've created. What the claim of the sentience people is that we throw so much hardware, energy, mixes of software together that it's beyond our ability to comprehend. And we can't do that. We can take any one of these systems, and it may take us some time, but we can decompose it to its little parts. We can find the problems, the bugs. We can tell what it's doing. And it's not coming up with a mind of its own. It absolutely is not. That's why we have computer science, is to be able to tell you that.
Right. Let's go back to sentience then. Like and again, we'll use this Jordan Peterson episode.
Sure.
And I'll put a link for that show. And look, I think the episode is fantastic. The conversation is great, but there's a lot of AI, generative AI algorithms in there. And when they're talking about how do we even know, like, look, we can go break out our Descartes, our Cobb and Hobbes and all these other philosophers. When something is sentient, it's hard to even understand like why I'm sentient. Like, are we even a simulation? This question that we ask ourselves. And I swear to God, I was in Walnut Creek the other night, and I saw a non playing character in a game in the parking lot I was in, and I'm like, oh, what's that guy doing? Because he was just standing there with his back to me, and you have to imagine my back's to you. He was standing there like this, and I'm like, when is that guy going to animate and turn on? But like, walk down the street, like, oh my God, am I in a simulation? So
he's got to rest.
Being a little bit silly, but that sentience, even now, like just the last show I recorded a little while ago, it'll come out later in the week. But we were talking about, as we get to our 50s, at least for me and him, our wisdom, is reaching a level where like we're more wise than we are, say, agile, right? Yeah. And that wisdom comes because you start to be able to see people that you couldn't see when you were 20, and you were just completely focused on. But I can do 100 push-ups. Watch me. And you're like, your grandfather's like, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing, do you?
Yeah, but here's the point, Pete. We could. That was the point.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's talk about sentience. I mean, this is the whole thing, right?
I mean, I think it's nice that they believe that. That's really great. It's just not there. It's not there with these algorithms. And these algorithms, the same algorithms that OpenAI runs to the completion algorithm, is the same algorithm that I run on my laptop. I just run it with a smaller data set. And what you're asking me to believe, if OpenAI, if ChatGPT has some sort of sentience to it or whatever else, is you're basically asking me to believe that the same algorithm I run on my laptop with a smaller data set has sentience too.
Right.
And
Right.
my laptop is nice. It is not sentient. That's just not happening.
Right.
You know, we
The
don't. You can't scale. You can't scale that up and get sentience. That you can't.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we talked about this before too. This is a fancy version of the 20 question machine that was a big thing in the 90s. Think of a thing, anything, Granny Smith apple. And they're like, and then you slowly ask questions, and it's just only so many questions before you can have your own mind blown. And you're like, look at this thing, knows what I'm thinking, right?
Right. I mean, you had a mentalist on your show. You've had him on a couple of times. Right. And
Yeah,
it's the way I like to appreciate it is you don't have to pretend that it's sentient to acknowledge that it's magnificent. Like we can be delighted by the results, but we can say, hey, those results are because this is a complicated machine running a complicated algorithm on complicated data, and it makes these delightful results. It even makes them often. It makes us happy with the results. Even when they're wrong, we're happy with the results, which is weird.
Yeah, you and I have been talking about how to put these things to work for us. And again, like I'll reference this show that Jordan put up and how his guest was using AI. And I'll say his name. I don't want to give the impression that this is negative, but it was such an interesting approach to using generative algorithms and trying to work on this forefront of energy policy. And that's what his name is. Let me get this right here. Alex Epstein, right? And I'd love to have him on the show because our energy policy has to be better. So let's say that for the last time. But as they're talking about how he's using AI, it sounded like he was like, look, it makes mistakes. So do my people, sort of these. Also, before I go talk to, and this is where I think he worked it well, then I'm gonna shut up. He's like, before I go talk to these $18,000 an hour lawyers who work in this space, I'm going to work on using AI to work on my creativity to find the thing that I really need to discuss with them. I'm not going to let it do all the work, but I'm going to let it inspire the direction I'm going.
Yeah, an analogy I like lately is vacuuming your house with a lawnmower. Like, it would work, right? The lawnmower sucks up. That's how the grass gets in the bag, is because there's suction created, right? Is it the right tool for the job? Is it a safe tool for the job? Maybe not. Can he, in a pinch, he could certainly make it work. If he doesn't cut his feet off and he doesn't eat up a carpet with it, call it a win. That's great. I'd want to see in detail what he's doing because these algorithms work on details. They don't work on generalities. They work on the detailed input. I'd want to see that. I'd want to see his actual workflow before, I, the reluctant AI expert, put my blessing on it or don't put my blessing on it. One of the big surprises to me, Pete, I've talked about it before, but I ran into this guy on LinkedIn who was really, really jazzed that he asked ChatGPT to tell him about a company before he went into a sales call with the company. And my immediate reaction was, well, it's going to give you BS. Well, why are you doing that? You're going to get garbage. And then I stepped back and I thought about it. What's he trying to do here? He's not trying to get facts about the company. Facts are not what matters. He's trying to get the vibe of the company. And these generative algorithms do a very, very good job of describing the vibe. They may get the facts wrong. They may get the trees all wrong, but the forest, they get perfect. So he knows what he's going in with. And then if you think about the context of a sales meeting, if he goes in with something that's not a fact, something that's not true or not quite right or misrepresented, and he says, I understand you do, Pete, I understand you do a podcast and it's all about who's got the biggest microphone. That's what it's all about when you're on a podcast. And you would tell me, Brad, that's not a
microphone.
Right. There you go. Pete, I've got the biggest microphone here, but the point being is that's not what podcasts are about. Now that's an opportunity for you to tell me, hey, let me tell you about the podcast business, and I'm all ears.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I only have that information to tell you because I looked up and got something wrong from ChatGPT. Total win.
Mhm.
Take the win.
Yeah. Take the win.
Take the
Yeah.
win.
The getting back to how Alex is using AI with his energy policy influence. What really
Uh-huh.
matters is less the AI thing, and it's really his
Yeah.
ability to get those meetings because he's been an honest agent for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
He's developed influence with a wide variety of people, and it's not party centric, right? So
And,
he's looking at these things and pointing out, by the way you calculate your math, the way you establish your policy is
oh
flawed at its
yeah.
base,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And
He was doing this to save lawyer time. It was to try to come up. But maybe that does. Maybe just
Mhm.
getting something to compile the stuff together, however badly it is, and giving that as a draft to an expensive lawyer to take an
Yeah,
hour with. If that process works, that's great. Maybe the process doesn't work. If
yeah,
I'm trying to write a policy paper and you go give me a draft that Chat GPT does, and it's completely wrong, that may take my focus off of being able to get it right, and I'm going to spend 10 hours editing where it would take me 1 hour to do it from scratch. So you
right.
really have to look at that workflow. But to be honest, I thought that was just such a detail in what he was talking about. I really didn't care. I cared much more what he was
Mm.
talking about spelling out how these companies deal with so-called clean energy, and it's
Sure,
not clean.
sure,
It's not clean. I mean,
right.
there's a big lying accounting game going on so they can have a high ESG score. It's really kind of weird, and it seems really, really wasteful.
And in my head, if you were to mess with AI and say, "Tell me about the nature of the energy that comes to my house," like
Yeah.
what sources does it come from? Maybe it can say, "Oh yeah, that's right. Well, you've got power coming from here, 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 and here." I can't tell you how much of each you're using because that's unknowable, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
sort it that way. It's just a big tube, and it comes to you via a big tube, and so that makes you go, well, what's Apple down the road? And we're picking on Apple here for a second because they were used as an
Right.
example. When Apple is using up all these gigawatts of power because they've got this generative AI making things, and they go, yeah, we're clean, and I'm like, how the fuck can you be clean when you've got
Clean.
like I love to say like me and my gas stove. I promise we're not the problem. Like we're
Yeah.
not the problem here. It's just not it. But energy policy looks at it and goes, "Oh, Pete, geez, you got 93 gallons a day of water going through your house, and everything, and it struggles to master that." So Alex comes in and says, "Look at the root of your calculations here," and AI seems to reliably. He was super stoked about it, and he was stoked about paying the subscription for the higher level of Chat GPT.
Well, he was stoked about if we could generate all the energy, if we could take all the sun's energy and convert it into AI processing, we would have so much intelligence. I mean that's taking his position to an extreme.
Right.
I'm not sure that happens. I think, on the small end, I've got a laptop here. I don't use a
Mm-hmm.
GPU. I can generate wonderful stories with it that aren't as annoyingly loquacious as the stories that ChatGPT would generate. I'm using it
Right.
for the right purposes. For the purposes the generative algorithms are good at.
For the purposes of this conversation, I developed
Mm-hmm.
an image using Grok. And Grok, it's fun to
I
play with,
owed you
right?
that. I know I owed you that.
It's
I'm
all
sorry,
right.
buddy.
It,
All
it's
right.
it's all right. It doesn't matter because I can quickly make it with my robot, right? And so I
Yeah.
typed in, create for me an image of Brad Hutchings interacting with Deep Seek, and it's like two dudes in a room. Is that what you want? Two dudes in a room. How about two dudes in a room? And I'm like, nope, that
I
didn't
hope my
work.
mouth was sort of closed. My God.
Well, yeah, and a couple of the guys looked like they looked like alarmy stock photo dudes.
Yeah.
Like this thing's
Yeah.
been trained on there, But then I said, oh, okay, that didn't work. Total swing and a miss, right? And I'm like, all right,
Right.
now I know it's not going to work. But let me just try this. Show me a compare and contrast visually of Grok and DeepSeek, and it's like, how about these beavers? Beavers on a chart. Beavers on a
Yeah.
chart. Is that what you want? Beavers on a chart.
Right.
I will not trust my energy policy platform if my accountability is valued, right? Because I'm trustworthy. I don't tell Alex like that. That was my business before when I was a spy. I'm going to tell you what I saw. You
Yeah.
disagree with my analysis, that's fine, and I'll go back and clarify. But you're paying me to be honest here,
Mm-hmm.
And when you need bad news, here comes Bad News Turner. Hey, I got bad news for you. But if Grok can't handle that, if DeepSeek can't handle that, if Copilot can't handle that, I'm not going to lean that hard on it to go into this $18,000 an hour attorney with my
Right.
how about a picture of beavers?
You know what? The entire end-to-end process seemed to work for him. Now, could I optimize this process a little bit by telling him, "Hey, don't spend
Yeah.
$200 on ChatGPT. Do it on your own laptop"? Yeah, and the
Okay,
results would
let's
be
talk
just
about
as
that.
good. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
talk.
let's
The
talk
results
about
would
that
be just as
because
good.
right. So Alex is sitting here with us, right? Boop, he's in a third
Yeah.
screen, and you're like, "Hey, man, don't do that." Or how about give Brad $10? Just like let
Give me
me
10.
set this
Yeah.
thing up. But what is the pitch to Alex if he was sitting here with us?
My pitch is give me an afternoon and I'll save you a whole bunch of money. And I'll just say,
Right.
hang with me for an afternoon. I want to hang with you. I want to see what you do. And we're going to take every input that you put into ChatGPT and we're going to put it into, let's call it DeepSeek, running on my laptop. You can't possibly imagine how it could be as powerful. But I'm going to show you answer for answer that it keeps up with everything you're doing. Because what you're asking for is general knowledge that ChatGPT has. ChatGPT does not have special knowledge about the oil and gas industry. It just has a lot more parameters, and what those turn into is not more general knowledge. They turn into bigger SAT words strung together. That's what they turn into. And I'll show
Yeah.
you that for the application you're working on. I'll show you that for an application I'm working on. And you'll start to get in your head that the big expensive models running in the cloud, saving all of your interactions, saving the data that you upload that's from your customers and stuff, are really not better interactions than you would get keeping it all private and local. And when that hits you, then your default will be go private and local. And you know what? If you don't like the answer, well, then ask ChatGPT and maybe it gives you something better in that case.
Yeah. And that goes back to his root premise. Like, hey, my people make their mistakes on directions already, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still dealing with mistakes. But now you're saying don't spend extra money on it. Keep
No.
it off of the web, keep it
Uh-huh.
small scale. And then, yeah, and have your own so you're not dependent upon somebody else's anything, right? And one thing we
Yeah.
have learned these last few years is that if you find yourself, whether it's true or not, politically misaligned with your platform or whatever it is,
Yeah.
pick on Patreon here, they can lights out your business because you're dependent upon them. And you're saying, don't depend on somebody else. Don't publish stuff to the web where anybody can access it. Do this
Yeah.
thing on your own thing. Okay.
Hey, I'm glad my business didn't depend on my Twitter presence because under the old regime, I was booted.
Me too.
You know,
Me too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that can definitely happen. There's a hybrid model too, Pete, and that is where, say, someone you trust, and these will probably be smaller vendors, not bigger vendors with their clashing agendas. Someone you trust could put up a version of the LLMs I offer on the web so they're accessible to you. You don't have to install
Okay.
them on your computer, but they're accessible on the web. They're accessible wherever you are. They're accessible on your phone. They're accessible to your coworkers. And for a fee that might be $100 a month, $200 a month, maybe $500 a month, depending on how much service they're giving you, we'll provide that private service to you. And you want to know something cool? I was on the phone this morning at 11 a.m. with a dude I'd never met, who I just knew from my LinkedIn contacts, and just had a feeling about him that he and I were sort of on the same page. We're planning to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you, instead of giving $200 to ChatGPT and having limits on what you're doing and having all of your questions and its responses cached, saved, subject to somebody, why are you asking about burying a body?
Yeah.
That's my test, by the way, right? Can I ask the thing how to bury a body? It turns out with all these small models, you can ask it how to bury a body and get a good response. So if you're a
Yeah.
screenwriter trying to write something about the bayou, murders in the bayou, yeah, the thing can help you out. anybody who really wants to bury a body because they have to bury a body, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
They're going to search the
Or you
internet
can
and
just
figure it out.
go ask a coon ass, and you get like
Yeah,
my buddy Rich the day. He's like, you just ask me, I'll tell you where to put them. You put them in
right.
out there in the bayou. They're not coming back. And you don't got to train Rich. He'll just say it. He'll just say it out loud.
Yeah,
He's like, you gotta behave out there,
he's not going
south of New Orleans.
right. He's not going to report you to the authorities for asking about where to
No,
bury a body.
because you might take me out to the bayou. Hey, Rich, you want to go fishing? Hey, I want to go fishing, but I want to come back too.
I want to come back in a barrel. Yeah.
And this is the thing that's like, oh, you're so precious with your little rules, right? Like,
Right.
there is an anarchist cookbook in the library. You can absolutely
Yeah.
go check it out.
Yeah.
It's in so many sources. The FBI can't track every place that it goes, even if it wants to track the library. And look, there is that rumor, like, when you check that out, there's an automatic like, yeah, maybe, but really, no. It's a fucking book. You can sit there by the fireplace and read it all you want and have no idea. So,
Look,
these things are accessible.
I'm on a TSA watch list for showing too much butt crack one day accidentally. I mean, the last thing I'm concerned about is that they know that I've read. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
The last thing they care about.
Okay, so we get into these runs where something takes off and goes crazy, right?
Mhm.
And then we shift dramatically. And so I'm going to bring this back to energy policy, because one of the things that Alex and Jordan discussed was we are consuming energy at a rate that has caused all of the corporations earlier like, we're going to make everything green by 1992 or whatever it was going to
Yeah.
be. They've now have to eat those words, because now they're like, by the way, what we want is gargantuan leaps in how much energy we consume. And so again, like, if you wanted to be environmentally conscious and use generative AI, then you would have to do it on your laptop, small scale Brad style, right? Because you wouldn't want to have a server crater full of server farm in some kind of like moon orbit, like all the energy it takes to do that, to get to the information that you're going to need. We consume more and more energy all the time, and there's nothing stopping that. Nothing.
Yeah, it's worse than you can even imagine, because what we're talking about is where Microsoft has literally put in some billions of dollars into the process of reopening 3 Mile Island, which
Right.
You think, okay, it's not Diablo Canyon, it's not what was the one, San Onofre, it's 3 Mile Island. Like, okay, yes, more people were killed in Ted Kennedy's car than at 3 Mile Island. That's an absolute truth. But at the same time, it's still the worst nuclear accident or near nuclear accident that we had, in the continental United States. And I mean, that's even actually it was the 50th anniversary of accidentally dropping 2 hydrogen bombs on North Carolina that didn't explode just recently, last week.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done stupid things, right?
Oops a daisy. Yeah, right.
That 3 Mile Island was the close, in all of our memory that are our age. Like, that is unthinkable that is anything but a park. Like, you mean it still has the cooling towers? It still has generators that we could recommission and reopen? That's crazy. Well, no, Microsoft is paying for it. That's going to happen in 4 years.
Right.
Because we need all this energy.
Yeah. So, and again, this is on topic but adjacent. So, does this mean that because of the craving currently today for, all of the cryptocurrencies and generative AI, does this mean that we're going to get our wish of having more nuclear energy and going back to relying on carbon-based energy consumption? Because it seems like, what we have right now with wind and solar, and God bless, like, I want to be a good, steward of the earth, but I can't compete with Microsoft's consumption, and I contribute to that because I use Microsoft, I use Bing, all these things, right? So are we just punting that whole thing and admitting now that, like, that's not the direction we're going to go? We're going to have to find a different way to get out of this pickle.
I think from their conversation you can tell that it's inevitable that we're going to punt on it anyway, just because our energy needs are growing. This is this AI thing is certainly a quick growth spurt, from the teenager is going from 4'6" to about 7'2", in very, very short order. And that's the
Right.
path we're on.
Yeah.
Is that's not that's not doable with intermittent energy, and when you talk about wind and solar and these things that are considered green and whatever else, they're not always on. They're
Yeah.
not on when you need them. We need energy that's on when we need it, and
Right.
that's either going to mean
Yeah.
nuclear or fossil fuels.
A
Not a lot of
pal of
choices there.
mine has recently installed solar, and it handles the bulk of what his family needs, battery as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he is like saying, if I do draw from the power company, during this time of year when there's less sun and everything else, and at night, yeah, I get charged. And when I access the network, I might get charged $1,000 usage fee,
Mm-hmm.
even though I've got solar, because that solar company, that power company on their end of the grid, they've got to find a way to stay open too. And if you don't need
Mm-hmm.
all the energy you used to need, they still need that money to keep that place running, right? And so we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing these unintended consequences of going to solar if it doesn't meet your needs for whatever reason. Like you want to dry clothes at night when you're home and not at work, right? Like a lot of people
Right.
do. Like, oh, there goes your battery power. We'll see you in
Right.
the morning when you got no power and you have to pay the man to get a little bit of heat for your coffee.
Right.
And so now you're paying $1,000. And I'm saying $1,000, but there's a scenario where that happens, or $250, to access that thing twice a month in the winter. It's like I'm paying $500 to access power, not even for the energy I'm using. This is all the cost of AI, isn't it?
I mean, it could be. I mean, if AI grows that quickly and it's consuming energy that isn't being replaced, that could be. Is
Mhm.
that is that actually what's going to happen? I'm not terribly sure. I don't think we found.
Okay.
Well, we haven't settled on applications that are good with AI. Like
Right,
everybody says, oh yeah, it'll be AGI, but it's still Pete. It's still you and I making stupid pictures, is what it is,
right,
right?
right. Yeah. So
And then
when you're looking at, when you're running a small business, right?
yeah,
And you have whatever it is. Like let's say that my little production company grows to 20 employees. I mean, that is fully a small business, right?
mm-hmm,
And it would be spectacular growth for me to be like, I got 20 souls to take care of.
mm-hmm.
Um, how am I going to use AI in a creative field that I'm in? Like, how am I going to lean on that? Like, are they going to start screenplays and do like outlines for me? Okay, great. Or they can just write the fucking things themselves. Like we're trying to get quality to make, these projects, not, I don't need speed there, I guess is what I'm saying. How does a small company, a guy who owns a couple of franchises that sell fast food, you bought a couple
Yeah.
of Schlotsky's delis. How is AI helping that guy?
Well, how's AI helping McDonald's right now? Basically, it's making everybody in their drive-through absolutely nuts because they hear three. We've talked about this before. You hear 3 or 4 words of AI voice, and then if the actual drive-through operator is on the ball, she jumps in real quickly to say, "Yeah, I'm here. What can I do
Right.
for you, sir?" Right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's confusion right now is what it's added. Pete, there's a lot of talk about, AI is a toddler right now. It's going to be a teenager next year and it's going to be a PhD the year after.
Right.
But
Right.
I think the reality really is with generative algorithms and this gets to your business, is your business with people who don't understand how to use generative algorithms for some tasks they run into, and not to make them, like
Mhm.
AI pilots or script kiddies or prompt engineers or whatever else. They don't have to do that. But
Prompt engineers.
when they're trained up a little bit on how they can use these things when it's appropriate to
Mhm.
use them, they're going to be smarter. That's going to
Okay.
be worth the investment in, because it's going to play out over years and years. You do a training
Right.
with them and up their skills a little bit, they'll be able to use them, a whole bunch in a whole bunch of new situations that they come into. Is an AI app going to come in and like do what you like? Look, Pete, we've talked about generating your little shorts, from these episodes. Still a total mess. How much energy
Yeah.
has gone into that? It's
Yeah.
and how
Right.
many have you sent
Right.
out? And they're, I mean, I know why you're doing it. I know that it's important to do it. I can tell you,
But
and
is it?
you're not going to take it as
Yeah.
offense. They're not getting any better.
Yeah.
You know?
No, 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 they're not getting any better. They're so bad that I just universally, but you probably have noticed, I just publish them. I'm just like, I'm not even
Yeah,
gonna listen to it
exactly.
because it is so commonly garbage. Like it's just on its face. It's part of my rebellion. Like
Yeah.
okay, there you
Oh, I
go.
see what you're doing with it. Like, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. I can totally see you working there, but they are not
yeah,
getting better. You know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I think expecting AI to get better, that's not the thing to do. It's, can we make people better with these generative tools? And I think we can.
Mm.
And I think you're, like you generating that image that you asked me to generate, that I got caught up in meeting people and not doing what you asked me to do.
Yeah.
Turns out you're kind of trained up in that, and you can do that really easily, just like I'm trained up in it and I can do that really easily. And I can't wait to see what the image is after this show. But I'm sure it added some spice and some kind of a cool way to invite people to watch. And that's neat.
What is funny about it is because you didn't grab that image from me like I asked you to. I have one ready to go at all times, right? Like I could have
Yeah.
just taken any standard one I've done before and just put a new title above it. But because that AI response was so bad,
So quick. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like, I'll give you two shots, strike one, strike. You know what? You're out. You're out. You
Right.
you popped out meekly, softly to the catcher because you couldn't even identify yourself, Grok, in the picture.
Right.
So that's pretty bad, right? And so
Right.
if there hadn't have been AI, like if it had been a year ago and I just did this, I know there was AI a year ago, but I wasn't going to generate photos with it. I would have just taken the existing photo and had a solution that was already better, right? Because I have one that I've already seen it. I've already said, that one's good and it applies to all these things. Here it goes. But the belief that somehow I want to see a YouTube short or I'm saying short, not like the specific short, but like a short video on YouTube about Elvis Presley and some part of his life. 'Cause I've been enjoying some Elvis stuff, and it's got what's clearly an AI photo. And I start listening, and I'm like, this is the most vapid, dull thing ever. And
Yep.
so I just turned it off, And so that person got a little hit for 2.5 minutes, but it was so banal that
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no point in that. And I don't want more of that, man. I don't want stuff that's just easy and further clouds and adds noise to the sweetest things in life.
Pete, rewind 6 years when you were doing lots of. I know, right? I got you on the. I got the cassette and I've got the pen doing the rewind.
Yeah.
But you were doing lots of album fights, and for a while you used to rely on me to do the goofy artwork for the album fights.
Yeah, they're
And
fun. Yeah.
at some point, I flaked on you because that was work. Like I couldn't. Like
Hmm.
I'm good with Photoshop, with stupid Photoshop things, but that's work. I could put 2 hours into that, and that would feel like
Right.
fast, right? And
Right. Yeah.
and sometimes I just didn't have time to do it, right? Well, this is kind of a cool thing. Is we're at a spot where if you've got a few seconds for writing a clever prompt, you can get something kind of neat out of Grok that advertises
Right.
what you're doing. That's a neat place to be, and it's neat to have the talent to do that because you don't have to rely on somebody, on a Photoshop hack like me to
Hmm.
throw some things together and completely butcher it. You can have Grok completely butcher it in a couple of seconds. It's no
Right.
no overnight waiting for that. So that's pretty cool. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be happy that generative algorithms give us that and we can do it. By the way, I do want to switch toward the big news of the day is
Mm.
that NVIDIA was down 17% of its market value on news of this Chinese open source model called DeepSeek. Like it has really rocked the industry. We want to be careful with comparisons. I mean, I could come up with, is it 9/11? Is it landing on the moon? No, it's not. It's not any of those. It's not Hiroshima. It's not Pearl Harbor.
Right.
Right. It's you came up with the Telegraph. It's I mean, maybe it's the Telegraph. I came up with it's Pontiac Fieros. It's what I see that we have with that is we have the situation where the whole industry has been spending and spending and spending. You know, this whole energy discussion is about, well, let's just spend $7 trillion on energy, you know, or let's
Right.
redirect all of our energy policy because we're doing AI now, you know, and
Right.
you'd have the Jordan
Oops.
Peterson, yeah, oops.
Yeah.
Right, that's kind of expensive. And then this little company comes along, they spent $5 million and they did something good enough. They cut all the corners
Mm.
that we're so proud of, you know, having done, like safety and, you know, eliminating bias and, you know, all the stuff that everybody demands from AI. And they cut the corners, and it's kind of good enough, and it's good enough for what we do. And that's what people have been discovering this weekend and are discovering this week, and realizing, hey, we don't have to invest all the money to get a good enough tool. And I think that does change the world of quote AI a whole bunch. And you know why I stopped using the term earlier this month, and I just call it generative algorithms now. And I purposely
Yeah.
do it. Like I'll go into people's AI chats on LinkedIn where they're talking about AI, and I'll even correct them. I'll say there's nothing intelligent about it. It's a generative algorithm. Here's what it does. Now, when it does these things, these are the results you get. Is this consistent with what you expect? You know, I'll be like really annoying like that. And I've been doing that for a month. But today is the day when everybody's doing that.
Mm.
They're discovering
Hmm.
it. And it's a neat thing. We're trying to figure out where the value is in all this stuff rather than saying, hey, we have to spend $7 trillion to see any
Right.
value. I can't
Yeah.
believe we fell for it. I don't think anybody can.
Yeah. Well, I guess we get so enamored with all these things that go forward, and you know, look, I've talked to a lot of software people in my career of interviewing people,
Mm-hmm.
and they always want to tell you the positive outcome. And when I ask them, why don't you ever talk about the negative things? They're like, because I'm trying to sell something. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to make money here. I don't want to say, by the way, this might ruin your fucking life.
Yeah. It's not.
Let me,
Yeah. These algorithms
I
aren't going
made
to
a
ruin
couple.
anybody's life. But yeah.
Are you sure?
Well,
No
I
one's
mean, other
committed
than
suicide from social media things and ended up in bad spots. I mean, yeah, it can get, like you do anything at grand
yeah.
scale, you're going to kill people. By the way, I asked Grok,
Yes.
give me an image of you two, Joshua Tree, taking on Nirvana in an album fight, and there's Kurt
Oh my
Cobain in
god.
a puddle next to Bono's, and here's another one. There you go, those guys. Yeah. So look, that's funny.
Yeah, that's
That's not much of a
hilarious.
Joshua Tree, but you know,
I mean, it would have been super funny
if you
if
would have
Bono
sent me
had a.
that, I would have been like, "That's pretty fucking funny." I wish Grok would have added the words I asked it to ask, you know, but you would
You know,
have, you
yeah.
know.
There. Well, words are difficult because the way diffusion works, it kind of has to evaluate each iteration of making the image better. It starts with noise, and then it kind of makes it better, less noisy each time, and it has to kind of to get. I don't know if you wanted him to wear a T-shirt with something that said on it, you know, words on it or
Yeah,
whatever. It has
right.
to it has to like OCR, optical character recognition,
Hmm.
the emerging letters and make sure they're getting closer to what you want rather than far away.
Yeah,
It does terrible
yeah.
with written text. Yeah.
The funny thing here is we've got the wrong era of Bono, and there only one era of Kurt Cobain. So the Kurt Cobain one is actually not too bad. I can't tell if he's got 17 fingers or not, but
Oh
there's
wait,
there's
go
some
back to that.
pictures.
I think he had at least six, which would be yeah, one, two, three, four. Oh, maybe he's just got five there. How about
Yeah,
that?
I mean it's
Yeah.
the image is obviously recognizable as being Bono, and again I can't see, but you know that does look like Kurt Cobain and Bono, and that should be a Joshua Tree. Although this one is not. This one I think is. Yeah, this is Joshua Tree back there. You know, but and this whole thing is great because it's just
Just
like
had his
I don't
if he
know.
just had his hand out to drown him, that would be perfect, right?
Yeah, right. And by the way, just for anybody wondering, you two won this fight, and it was they drowned Nirvana because you two is just a better. They were more seasoned. They have more tools, and so they stomped the living shit out of Nirvana. Nevermind. And so yeah, there you go. There's a decent little use case for it where in that one specific case, yeah, Grok pretty fast came up with something, and that was the second. So the first one with this one, you know, it gave me four images, and I'm like, oh, that one's funny. Brad will like that, and so I picked that
Mm-hmm.
one, and then I tried to add the words, and then no words. So there you go.
I was trying to make one with Sam Altman literally jumping a shark, except I didn't want him to jump a shark. I wanted him to jump a lake trout. and
Mhm.
then I forget what I wanted his shirt to say, something like "fooled by DeepSeek" or something. Anyway,
Mhm.
Grok. You know what? You ever had Grok give up in the middle, where it seems
Yeah.
like it's going
Yeah.
full steam? Okay, so the reason it gives up in the middle is not because it can't; it's because it won't. Like
Mm.
some little filter comes in and says, "No, we're not doing this," and then it's done. So
I've
one of
seen
my
it.
one of my little tricks is to screen record when I do something that might be a little bit edgy with Grok, so that I can go back
Mm.
and pick a frame and maybe get at least a thumbnail of what I was doing that Grok didn't want to do. And that can be funny in and of itself. But yeah, when it
Yeah.
stops like that, it's because you've hit a nerve, not because it can't.
Yeah, you're right. It'll say, "Hey, there's a lot of capacity going on." So now it's
Yeah,
straight up lying to me, right? You're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
now you're a liar."
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It's.
Getting
Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry. Go.
No, I was just gonna say I wanted to get back into the AI thing because we had a whole conversation we were going to have, and I just got busy, so we weren't able to have it. Do you want to go
Mm-hmm.
back to your thoughts of 10 days ago? And it almost seems like why 10 days ago?
Sure.
It's all different now, but those thoughts were legitimate thoughts, and I don't want to run past it without covering those.
Sure. So two of them. I mean, one of them was I'm not calling it artificial intelligence anymore. I will do
Right.
posts on LinkedIn. It is generative algorithms is what it is because that's what they are. And
Yeah.
I'll talk about I will talk about the wonderful stories that generative algorithms can write. I will talk about the wonderful pictures that Grok can make. I
Yeah.
will occasionally do a post on, okay, you want something more businessy? Let's do emergency preparedness drills. Oh boy, you know what?
Mm.
Emergency preparedness drills, Pete, are going to be kind of big. I have a feeling going forward.
Mm.
I have a feeling, especially down here, that you're going to want to see the fire department out on the street pretending to answer a call of some kind. Because you're going
Yeah.
to know that if they're practicing, they're not going to F this up when it really, really matters, like we're seeing up north of
Right.
us right now. Not the
Yeah.
individual firefighter's fault. They're not practicing. They're not
Yeah.
identifying the problems that. Yeah, this is. I really wish George were around because he would see this and say, "Yeah, we're not finding the problems. That's what's happening here. We're busy doing other things rather than being prepared for these things." Um,
Yeah.
if I can make situations for firefighters to practice, make them interesting, um, I can do that with generative AI. George and I
Hmm.
showed that in an afternoon messing around one day. That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked
Yeah.
with Sebastian Bay last. That was our last talk,
We
I
did.
think. He
We
makes
did.
games, um,
Yeah.
and there's a little more with his latest game. I saw in an interview where he talked about during the pandemic he's locked in. He's got a spreadsheet. He just starts kind of creating these situations and these. What are the weapons? What are the capabilities? What are this? Puts them all in a spreadsheet. Then he starts to make the cards. Yeah, and now he's got a publishing company that's picked that up and is doing those things. They actually just released a version of the game for the Baltics. Um, but a lot of that stuff could be done with generative AI to assist with it. He wouldn't have to do all of the work himself and think those things out himself. I mean, obviously he's got to make sure that they make sense what comes up, but you could even add dynamic aspects to the games, like figuring out a starting position for each player that they have to play. They don't
Hmm.
get to
Hmm.
choose. They don't get to choose their weapons and cards. Let's assign it. Let's make them play a bad hand. You can do that with generative AI, and even just off the shelf generative AI that'll run on your laptop. We'll start to use those things for that.
I've just used Grok and I said, write me a 100-word story using words no longer than 3 letters long. And so I'm going to put that in here. But
Yeah,
that
how'd that do?
not very good. I mean, look,
Oh.
given those parameters, it definitely. I haven't counted the word. I haven't done a word count on it, but several of the words are longer than four letters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but
Mm-hmm.
but it gave it a good try. There it
Yeah.
is. But yeah, the word. Let's see here. I think there's
Hopped.
perched,
Hopped is way
leaped,
out.
right? And so it ignored what it was supposed to do. Happy. I'm glad they put the word happy in there, but that's against the rules, right? So
Right.
it got going, and then somewhere it lost the plot. And I don't know why it lost the plot, but it broke the rules. And so if I was going to give this to a kid or whatever, and I was like, every one of these words is for, I can go in and break out my thesaurus, But
Yeah.
yeah, so it
So we
did
have a
okay.
friend. We have a friend who did this, who made 3-letter word books.
This
That's
I was
our
inspired by
buddy,
David's work right there.
right? Our
Yes.
buddy David. I watched David in his process of writing one of these. It's very
Mhm.
difficult work, right? First, you've got to get the 3-letter words. Now you've got to make it make sense. Now you've got to make it make sense and be interesting to a 3-year-old. Like, he had a lot of thinking work to make that happen. It
Right.
wasn't just stringing one word after another, which is, of course,
Right.
what generative AI does. This is not a great application for generative AI.
Right.
Weird, huh?
Yeah.
Now you've
Yeah. I
learned
tried it. Right.
right.
Yeah.
You've learned that with this. You've learned, hey, I tried doing this with it and it wasn't very good at it. And that's a good thing to
Mhm.
know. That adds to your capability in using this tool.
Yeah. So I always like to ask you to do this because you are the AI expert, the generative AI expert, or what I'm also now calling regenerative AI because you have to do it twice no matter what you do. The
Right.
That's why I'm calling it re. But when someone wants to get a hold of you and say, "God, Brandon, yeah, I saw you on Pete's show, and I'd love to hear more. How can you help me with my business?" What's the pitch, man? Tell
So
me why people want to talk to you.
so people should talk to me because I know how these algorithms work, and I can help them bridge the reality with the reality of their problem. And I can show them that they don't have to spend a lot of money to do it. I've spent, over a year looking for the value proposition in artificial intelligence. And while everybody else was looking high at things that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm looking low, like things that can run on your laptop, and value you can get out of that. Value like privacy, autonomy,
Sure.
control of what you're
Yeah.
doing, those kinds of things, and
Yeah.
making it so people can do that stuff. You can find me at bradhutchings.com. From there, you can find links to my Twitter account, where I actually have a Brad Hutchings AI Twitter account, where I don't know how to rename it because I don't have enough characters, so it's going to probably keep the AI. But yeah, there you go. You can find me there. And really, the best way to learn about how to use these technologies is to sit down with somebody who knows how to do them, and
Yeah.
like let the vibe just kind of infuse from one person to another. Taking a class in prompt engineering isn't going to make you useful for anything. Sitting down with
Yeah.
somebody who knows how to do this stuff and knows how to approach a problem, and you can approach the problem with them and learn from them, and they can learn about your domain and stuff. That's how you learn how to use the tool effectively.
If you're an emergency manager and you want to learn how to script out some scenarios that you can train on, you're
Hang
going
out
to
with me for
say,
an
"Yeah,
after.
that's probably good news." Yeah.
Yeah, hang out with me for an afternoon. I'm going to learn what you do and what you want, and then I'm going to say, okay, we've got this tool. Let's use this tool effectively to do this. Let's not do a question and answer. Let's, for instance, one of the things I show people is how to use completion mode rather than chat. I've shown on your podcast how chat is really an illusion. It gets in the way of letting the tool do the work.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to use AI to interact with the grandfather, make him a character in the scenario where you find a fire together in the Palisades and see what the AI comes up with what your grandfather's role is, right?
Could be a nice story. Yeah, if you want to use AI to
Yeah.
chat with your dead grandfather, I'm going to tell you, look, dude, get over yourself. You're not going to chat with your dead grandfather. Or
Right.
find a medium,
Right.
or do a seance or a palm reader.
Or a
But
large.
that's not what this does. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So Brad's going to talk to Brad. You can get a hold of Brad at bradhutchings.net. That's a great place
.com,
to grab
dot
him.
.com, .com,
Dot
.com.
com, dot com,
It's all
dot
right.
com, dot com. Everybody's right there. Just look at that. Don't listen to the
Yes.
guy with cataracts. And small scale, not expensive, on your computer, not on the web.
Yes, and you know what? All this stuff this week that you're going to hear about the Chinese beat us at AI or whatever else, ignore it. It's
Okay.
noise. It's what's happening right now is people are looking at where the value is on the table, and they're flocking to that and away from the things that are expensive. We don't like expensive things. We like things that provide us value. Real simple correction, that's all. Nothing to worry about.
Sometimes the 127th mover is the right one. The person who's got a little more elegance and the right pace. Yeah. All right. Well, then I'm going to wrap this up. Anything else you want to say before I do that?
That's it, Pete. Thanks. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you.
Yeah. Everybody, you're watching the Break It Down Show. It's always great when you subscribe. It's even better when you go to breakitdownshow.com, go to the PayPal link and be like, you know what? I'm hooked Pete up. Dink, push that button, make a subscription. drop $100, whatever it is. I'm going to put that money to work and do great things. So I will see you all later. Bradley, I'll talk to you in a second.
All right.